Yo, Ran here. Today in this video, I'll be doing an updated Shikai tier list. This will be based off on my personal experience and mainly in 1v1 situations. But before we begin, I'd like to mention that I'm almost at 10,000 subs. So if you could, please subscribe as it would mean a lot. Alright, enough yapping. Let's get on to the video. Alright, let's begin with Judgement first. I'm gonna be putting this in D tier since it's kinda mid, not gonna lie. The attacks are kinda weird to hit and does mid damage. Not great. Alright, so next we have Berserk. I'll be putting this in C tier only because of its rage ability, which is pretty good. And the rest of the kit is kinda meh. Next we have Creation, and it's going straight to F tier. Moving on, we have Shadow. This Shikai is amazing for being a common rarity. So good for 1v1 and 2v2. The Shadow Grab move is so good for starting combos. And the TP move is good at chasing people. Anyways, moving on to Thunder. This goes into a tier. This is amazing, just like Shadow, but it's easily parryable and not as good as Shadow for 2v2, so that's why it's not an S. But don't sleep on Thunder, because it's still so good for combos. Anyways, moving on to Ice. This is an easy S tier obviously. Tracing ice pellets that can pressure opponents and moves that disables your opponent's dashes plus stun is just amazing. On top of that, it also gets a counter. Now if this were a Benkai tier list, I'd have this at number 1 for best element. But anyways, enough glazing. Let's move on to the next element. This one will be Threader. Now, I'm not too familiar with this element, since I kinda find it mid and hard to use. But I'll put it above Thunder and into a tier since people make this work well in combos somehow. But honestly, if I had more info, I'd probably put this in B tier. Now moving on to Confusion. I'll put this right behind Berserk, just because the upside down move is just so annoying to fight against. I hate this element so much. And you shouldn't sleep on it either if you're doing 1v1 since it's broken if you're using it right. Anyways, let's move on to Fire now. Yeah, I actually never seen a fire user or what this element even does, so I'ma put it in the mid tier. Anyways, moving on to Zangetsu. Now base is alright, but the Benkai is terrifying to fight. But since we're talking about base right now, it's going into B. Zangetsu is pretty hard to hit with some of the moves, but they do pretty good damage. Alright, now let's move on to Poison. This is pretty shit, I'm not gonna lie. The tick damage is pretty mid, and the overall performance of the moves is pretty meh, so it's going in C. Anyways, on to Wind now. Do I really gotta say anything about this one? I mean, hey, if you like Wind, then I guess that's fine. And if any of y'all get killed by a Wind user somehow, just soul ticket. Alright, now for my personal element, Blood. It's gonna be an easy S tier and above Ice. Pretty good damage. And it life drains a good amount. The blood pull on the X move is amazing if you're comboing with Light Kendo or Keto Fire Tornado. Now, if this were a Benkai tier list, I'd put this right behind Ice, but since this is a Shikai tier list, it will be above Ice. Now let's move on to Ink. This is pretty meh to be honest, but it really shines if you're using Hakuda, since it pairs well with it. Outside of Hakuda, it's an alright combo element, but I'd rather have Thunder higher than it just because. Now moving on to Suzumebachi. This is also pretty good with Hakuda. Well, actually, it really only shines with Hakuda. So if you have Hakuda, then this is high tier. Otherwise, this is low-key C tier. Don't sleep on this element unless you want to get one tapped by it, especially if they're a Hakuda user. And the Benkai for this element is insanely broken. So watch out for these Suzu Benkai users. Now moving on to Flower. Gonna have to put this as the back of S tier. Literally all of its base moves are easily parryable. It's only up here because it's amazing for grinding PV wise and the critical is pretty decent. Now onto Water. Water is alright in base. Not as good as Lightning, but better than Ink for sure. Decent damage as well. Now moving on to the newest Shikai added into the game, Benehime. Yeah, this shit is completely broken. Evase, passive shield, high damage, high posture damage. Literally the most broken mythical rarity out there. So yeah, that's the end of this tier list. Hope this helps y'all out with picking what Shikai you want. Remember to like and subscribe. Bye bye and hope y'all get the Shikai you want.
ダンジョンで起きたことは外部に漏れないって言ってなかったっけ？てめえ！俺の弟が誰だか知らん！